As a child, I always used to read about biting down on cyanide capsules, and I'd imagined the faint taste of the gelatin of the capsules, or the painful, frightening bits of glass if the capsules were of glass. And I actually wondered, as all this happened, if such things as cyanide capsules existed any longer. I thought of the weight, the heaviness of Jack as he lay on top of me. And then it was almost funny because it was so exactly what one had always imagined. They knocked on the door. So yes, we landed exactly where we knew we would land, like parachutists. Like the last bits of a puzzle, we floated down into the space that had been waiting. And once it was happening, it seemed right, and all the times we'd prayed, God, don't let it happen, seemed far away. I excused myself, went upstairs to the toilet and vomited, then I brushed my teeth and came back downstairs, and I was more or less fine, shivering a bit as we walked out into the rain, but still perfectly able to walk to the truck. God, I'd spent a lifetime being afraid of being locked in a cell, of being slapped in the face, of being punched, of being watched by someone while I sat on the toilet. In 1 second, it all dropped away. I let go of it in a second, like opening a fist, letting a bird out of a cage. Not the sound of a door closing. It felt like the sound of a door opening. A girl whom someone has locked in her room. Then the sounds of her footsteps clattering as she bursts out and runs outside.
Judy and Howard and their friends went to prison. It seems fantastic to say that. I never thought I'd be saying that sentence about people I knew. They went to prison. And it was a hard time, and a long time, 5 years. Arthur and Bob, well, they died fairly soon. You know, if there was a draft coming through a window in a restaurant, it was too much for Arthur. So I suppose you can imagine that the famously cold, famously damp climate of our rather famous local prison didn't agree with him at all, or with Bob either. They shriveled up like little mice and died. Mary, a bit hardier, lived 3 years, and Herbert 4, and then finally Sam died, and well, by the time the 5 years were up, only 2 of the old gang were there to be released. Judy, by decades the youngest, and can it be true? Guess quick before I say. Yes, that's right. The other one was that terribly delicate, terribly infirm old man, Howard. God, what a surprise. Of course, the funny part was that by the time they got out, Howard naturally was in the best of health, but Judy was sick with something or other, one of those illnesses that keeps going away and then coming back. One night when Judy and Howard were in prison, I was at a party, sort of stuffing myself with cheesecake and pie, and I started talking with this rather eccentric, rather dizzy older woman. I guess she was drunk. I know I was. She looked like she didn't go to parties all that often, and the outfit she wore was somewhat bizarre. Anyway, I suddenly had a blinding revelation. "Wait," I said, "you're Joan." And I was absolutely right. Isn't that amazing? It was the legendary Joan. And because we were drunk, we had a long, frank talk. And at one point she asked me, well, what was your problem with Howard, basically? Oh, I don't know, I said. I guess it was how much I hated him, really. Yes, exactly. That was my problem, too, she heartily agreed. To be quite frank, one has to admit that those were not bad years for a lot of people. A lot of people were getting by, not doing that badly, or even doing a bit better than that. I myself had a pretty good job. I wrote a column on sex for the Morning Urinal, as everyone absolutely insisted on calling it. It wasn't really such a terrible paper, but people just loved to make fun of it for some reason. It showed people's boldly independent spirits, I suppose. Poor Howard certainly didn't get to celebrate much after he got out of prison. Actually, it might seem to be, a little absurd to lock somebody up for 5 years and then have someone come to his house and shoot him, all basically because of a couple of essays he'd written several decades before. But you have to understand that no one person plans these things. Person A decides the first thing. Person B decides the second. I mean, that's just how it works. Someone had a fetish about mealtime shootings, one is bound to conclude. He was in his bedroom, and Judy had just brought him a plate of cold meat and salad. Once again, it was, "Don't get up." The guy walking behind him, the hole blasted into the back of his head, the blood pouring endlessly onto the plate. When I heard about it, of course, I went over to see Judy. And then a month later, she sold the house, and I went over again to help her pack things up. Oh, my God, that whole thing of moving. So depressing. The sale of effects, the garage cleaned, even the oil stains partially removed by means of some new process. The books in boxes carried down the stairs, ever so gently as if they were crates of eggs. I felt a sadness on the stairs as we took down the books, as I hadn't really when we'd carried down the corpse. Carrying the corpse down the stairs, I'd only felt, well, he won't be going down these stairs again.
We went away together, and we spent the night in a dirty little town way out on the water. The hotels were all closed, all the fancy places, the big restaurants. It was the off-season. For whatever reason, we didn't bring anything warm enough to wear. We were both freezing. Well, it was a dark, black, starless, moonless night with gusts of wind banging like fists on the windows of the little inn where we finally found a place to stay.
We walked up a narrow little flight of stairs with piles of old towels thrown on the landings. We turned a peculiar bent key in the door.
I had to hold on to the doorknob for a moment to keep from fainting. There was no heat in the room at all.
"What about me?" I asked her. "What about me?"